History of Roerich's expedition. Here is a wealth of collections, including literary, artistic and ethnographic exhibits concerning political, mystical and cloak and dagger riddles. Nicholas Roerich's Central Asian expedition is the greatest journey of the 20th century. The series dedicated to the Altai Mountains is a frenzy of colors. It reproduces the atmosphere and the heights where Roerich had been. Spectators who had not ascended those tops are now amazed by his works. He did his works with a light stroke of a brush, with his mind, the heart and the soul. The great artist spent just 10 days on Kazakh land and left more than just paintings as his heritage. Chapter 1: The Heart of Asia. Is the heart of Asia beating? Is it not muffled by the sand? Boatful and merciless waves of sand are all around, from Brahmaputra to Irtysh and from the Yellow Rivers to the Caspian Sea. The walls of ancient cities, gnawed by the time, overspread with nibbled skeletons. Where did the great travelers pass, the people of resettlements? This is a picture of contemplation which had been painted in America 3 years before the trip. This is a face of not a youngster, but neither is it a picture of an older man in a yellowish grey of the dawn. This is a unique showpiece of a one-of-a-kind collection. This is not a mere chance that the work is called the Dream of the East, because Roerich was not simply a realist painter, he was a symbolist first and foremost, and he used symbols to interpret his worldview. Neither a museum nor a book will give a right to picture Asia and other countries if one hasn't seen these countries with their own eyes and not even made at least some commemorative remarks. Spiritual search and new scientific discoveries. One can say that the entire life of the artist, philosopher, visionary and archaeologist Nicholas Roerich had been an overture ahead of the major route, the Central Asian expedition. Passing along the Indian route and through Central Asia, finding the roots of transmigration of peoples was his long-nurtured dream. In other words, the expedition was scientific and holistic because its aim was to gather ethnographic material. Apart from research and artistic goals, there were many other aims too. The most fantastic of them was perhaps an idea to combine Buddhism and communism, and on this unimaginable groundwork build a new state which could also cover Eastern Kazakhstan. This is one of the versions. Another one was surely a search for the mysterious Shambhala. Officially, he was pursuing some occulted and at the same time geographic aims. A lot has been written about this, but in effect he worked for the Soviet intelligence. He was one of the best and one of the pioneering agents of the Czech-Soviet state security organizations. What exact assignment he was completing while traveling in Central Asia remains unknown. Furthermore, official data shows that Roerich didn't have anything to do with Cheka. The artist was supposedly confused for an agent who went by the name Buddhist, known as Louis Horsch, who sponsored the exhibition and was a friend of the Roerich family at that time. Roerich appealed to the Soviet authorities, especially to the Foreign Affairs Ministry, with a request for assistance in making the expedition. Moreover, he was received by the intelligence chief Trilisser in 1926 and 1927. It couldn't have been otherwise. The name of another person considered to have been close to the secret circles turns up in the history of the journey. Yakov Blumkin supposedly traveled alongside Roerich's caravan for a while. Dzerzhinsky's protégé was tasked with rendering all possible assistance to the scientist. In 1925, Blumkin organized a similar expedition to embark on a search of Shambhala in the Himalayas. The Bolsheviks also wanted to be let in on the secret of immortality to navigate time and space.
История о Шамбале – это, наверное, история о том, как...
The story of Shambhala is a story about how to subdue people. Such thoughts ultimately transformed into real regimes, into real public movements. That same fascism and Stalinism
в реальные движения общественные, тот же фашизм, тот же сталинизм.
In December 1923, the expedition went through the gangboards of the Bombay Key across the entire territory of India and China, then to Kazakhstan and back. 3 route options were considered. The first one lay across Gulja to Almaty and then by car to Tashkent, followed by a direct train ride to the east. The next leg of the journey involved a visit to Tacheng and Semipalatinsk, the last and the most attractive route won. Chapter 2: The Stronghold of Evolution. The day is wonderful color-wise, with blue sky and a silky steppe. The Tarbagatai snow is on the left-hand side and spurs of the Altai are right to the north. Altai is the center of Asia, with cattle herds in the steppe, large herds of horses, black and blue, milk-white yachts, the sun, the wind, and the unheard-of transparency of the tones. Everything was close at hand to the expedition. Very often a mortally dangerous and almost always difficult route of the people of science and arts was only half completed. High-altitude passages of Karakorum, snow blizzards, the scorching Taklamakan, Sinzan was already behind, and what awaits the tired wanderers in the future? Nikolai Konstantinovich was 50 by then, and Yelena Ivanovna was 40. Surely, at this age, leading an expedition and going through Central Asia along these pathways was difficult. However, they withstood the severities, and the expedition lasted for 4 days. They froze and sometimes went without food, and their life was in danger at times. Effectively, this is an act of bravery. They performed a really heroic deed. Exhausted, the travelers wanted to take some rest and therefore chose a waterway across Zaysan. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it wasn't the village Zaysan but the lake Zaysan along Irtysh and to Omsk. The transition point was in the heart of Asia in Kazakhstan. Shambhala was somewhere near. Apart from the spiritual search, there was an economic interest. When in New York, the Roerichs and Louis Horsch, the same Buddhist agent, created 2 corporations called Ur and Beluga, which were to engage in construction, forestry and metal mining in the Altai. But the idea of having American corporations on the Soviet land was not less utopic than creating a Buddhist communist state. Meanwhile, the expedition took rest and familiarized itself with the country of hopes and endeavors. There are rose vermeil, wild peonies, yellow lilies, fleur-de-lis and hedge roses the Kyrgyz vigil had ridden before us. They were the same Scythians, with the same hats, leather trousers and just a core. One of the Kyrgyz men picked a bunch of red peonies for Yelena Ivanovna. Greetings to the spring earth in its new attire with grass, Goldilocks and the white walls of the Kuzuan border post. After having passed through China in May 1926, the Roerichs crossed the border of the Socialist Republic of Kazakhstan, which then was part of the Russian Federation. The Roerichs are in their homeland. They are met by educated and enlightened frontier guards. They ask the Roerichs a lot of questions, greet them kindly and become interested in the wealth of impressions that these travelers have. What other border post could have made it possible to discuss the space, global evolution and the differences of cultures, the artist wrote. The farewell was very cordial. 140 milestones from the border to the Topolev-Kasp Key on the Zaysan Lake across the nearby village, 4 unforgettable days and another 6 days along the Irtysh River. Curiously enough, the Roerichs met only clever and educated people, very much like a special accompaniment when frontier guards are interested in the space, and freight handlers show a keen interest in yoga. Freight handlers congregate at the gangways and ask to tell them stories. On the upper deck we are encircled by people of various ages, and all of them are consumed with a desire to know. Each of them has their own approaches and their own information. but they all share a mutual desire to learn more. What thirst for knowledge! Such thirst can move mountains and represents unflinching bravery for new endeavors. This is the bulwark of evolution.
This
is a wooden town of Ust-Kamenogorsk with an enlivened quay of Pavlodar. In Semipalatinsk, they reboarded a new steamer and had time to look around the town. They visited a bookstore, and in his diary Roerich made an unusual entry about the abundant literature, about cultural studies, and not a single low-minded edition. Chapter 3. The Legacy. He didn't stop to wonder. As an artist, Roerich stood still at the sight of a light step under the blue skies and wavy clouds. But as a political enthusiast, Roerich fully shared the views of the new authorities. As a businessman, Roerich was delighted by the opportunities which were opening up before him, and as a visionary, the fact that he was close to such a distant Shambhala gave him a thrill. The blue mountains are resonant, the white beluga, the flowers are bright, and the green grass and sedges are reposeful. This is literally a jungle town. The town of ringing bells, the Sunshine Town, these were tentative names for the capital city of the new country. This utopic state should have been situated in the Altai and Siberia, so to speak, a unified Asia. The project was even allegedly discussed with the Soviet authorities. During the trip, Roerich painted a picture about the proletariat chieftain, who he called Mahatma Lenin or the Holy Lenin. The plot of the painting, called The Arrival of the Term, resembles another picture which is not less famous. This painting is the dream of the East. The East is generally such a powerful state, and time of the East, as Roerich used to say, hasn't come yet, meaning that the East is in a dormant state, it is slumbering so far. When departing from Kazakhstan, he wrote in his diary, "The giant in the painting, the dream of the East, has not awoken yet, and his eyes are shut." But after a few years, his eyes opened. The giant looked around and decided that he wanted to know everything. The giant now knows what he possesses. Roerich devoutly believed that spiritual revival should begin from the East. Nikolai Konstantinovich and Elena Ivanovna said that Altai would prosper and that this was the land of the future where there would be great deeds. At the end of December 1926, Nikolai Konstantinovich sent a report of a mining engineer with 53 printed pages containing data about all samples of rocks found during the intelligence trips around the Beluga mountain. Their finds contained gold, copper ore, coal deposits, rock wool and molybdenite. They stopped near the Upper Uymon, close to Beluga, and spent 2 weeks there gathering ethnographic material and legends. Besides, they obtained a mineralogical collection, 500 paintings and 6 diaries, which was a result of a route that had covered 25,000 kilometers across 5 states. They had an opportunity to work in monastic libraries containing ancient manuscripts. Moreover, many people would come up and give them presents. Some were bought, but these were mainly gifts. They amassed a huge library of ancient texts. The research material is being studied to this day. This expedition is perhaps the wealthiest in terms of its artifacts and puzzles. Controversy surrounding Roerich, his fellow travelers and the treasures which they had brought have been circulating for almost a century now. As for the pseudo-scientific goals, not much was attained. The new state wasn't established and the corporation wasn't launched. Neither was Shambhala discovered. However, the latter is a disputable statement because the mysterious country might not have been opened up to the world, but might have been revealed to the Roerichs. Altai remains an unexplored treasure house in terms of prehistoric and historic times. The master of Altai, a snow-white mountain beluga which feeds all the rivers and fields, is ready to give up its riches.